You know this story, did I ever tell you a story with the lions? There's this mother lion has the lion cubs. And every day the mother feeds the lions. Then one day she says to the lion cubs, okay, it's time for you guys to fend for yourself. You're going to have to get your own food. So the lion cubs say, okay. And where can we go hunting? Anywhere you want. You're the kings of beasts. You know, you're the lions. Everybody's afraid of you. So the lion cubs say, okay, great. And they go off and they go off on the hunt. And they go walking towards this town. And on the town there's a huge billboard. And on the billboard there's a picture of Samson ripping apart a lion. It's the first thing they see. So they turn around and they come scampering home and say, hey, Mom, you told us we could go anywhere we want. The first thing we see is a billboard of Samson ripping apart a lion. So the mother says, then don't you understand? That's the proof that I'm right. Because if it was an everyday occurrence, they wouldn't put it up on a billboard because it doesn't happen that often. The fact that they put it up on a billboard and says, wow, hey, everybody, this finally happened that a human being ripped apart a lion. Doesn't usually happen. That's why we never claim to be infallible. Our percentages are better, and our general overall picture is better. Individually, of course individuals do sin. That's why the Torah was given to us. The law is not to sin. And we're capable of very much. So even when it comes to justification of behavior, they made a mistake. We're not afraid to make a mistake. I once went to a doctor, I had a very bad infection. So I went to the doctor and asked him he had to give me a certain type of antibiotic. He picked up the phone and he called an expert in the field to find out which antibiotic to give me. He said, I don't know which one to give you. And he called it. I was very happy. Because that means that if he's not calling experts, he probably knows what he's doing because he has no hesitation to admit, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm wrong. I don't know. And he picked up the phone and he called. We never claimed that we're infallible. Now, this is extremely important when a person has to learn, okay, so who can we trust? If the Sanhedrin can make a mistake, so who can we trust? What do we do now? Even Sanhedrin can make a mistake. So what do you do in life? What do you do? You have a question. You have a dilemma. What are you supposed to do in life? Let me ask you a question. Do doctors ever make mistakes? Yes. Oh boy. Do they ever? Do pilots ever get on the plane loaded? Don't ask any questions. Do you know that they did a survey, by the way, British in England, they did a survey. 35% or 33% of pilots have admitted they've fallen asleep in the cockpit. Which, okay. But of those 33%, 50% of those 33% say they have woken up and found the co-pilot sleeping as well. Now, who do you want to have fly your plane? Now, you still got a choice. Well, we have no other choice. We have to fly. And they're professional pilots, right? So we still have no choice. What are you going to do about doctors? Doctors make mistakes. What are you going to do? The answer is, by the way, the two English, I'm not picking on the English, by the way, but two pilots from British Air, I don't only remember, sorry, the United States it goes on, but two American pilots overflew Detroit. Two American pilots were flying from the West Coast to Detroit, and they were both busy playing with their, and finally the tower called them. They'd already gone 150 miles past Detroit, because they were both a bit too busy looking at the thing, and they came back. They weren't even responding to the calls from the tower. And then two British Air pilots got onto a plane. They were flying from Amsterdam to England. They got onto the plane, and somebody said to the authorities, I saw these two guys drinking in the bar, in the airport bar. Just a few minutes, sure enough, they were loaded. They were immediately depiloted. Right? Okay, that happens. It happens to doctors also. I had a guy here at the yeshiva who told me his father was a surgeon. His father would do surgery, 6 in the morning. He would come home, sit down, and knock off an entire bottle of scotch every night. And he got up 6 o'clock in the morning, fresh as a daisy, and went in to do surgery all day. And he was a great surgeon. And doesn't that inspire you with confidence? Right? And he went right back to work. Now, the question becomes like this. Doctors can make mistakes. Anybody can make. So who do you ask? So pay attention carefully, because it's important life. The answer is, we still have no choice. If a doctor can make a mistake, let's say they're right 9 times out of 10. If I'd ask you, you'd be right 3 times out of 10. So what do you do when you don't have a choice? When you don't have a choice, you still have to do the right thing, which is to go to the doctor. But he can make a mistake, right, but so could he, and so could he, and so could I. So where are you going to do? You have to do the logical thing in life. This applies in all areas of life. In all areas of life, you have to do the logical thing. The logical thing is always to consult with experts. Whatever the field is, could experts be wrong? If they weren't wrong, they'd be God. If they couldn't be wrong, they'd be God. Even Moshe Rabbeinu was wrong. Moshe Rabbeinu had a character flaw. At his level, it was practically invisible. But he also wasn't perfect. He was a human being. So if a person understands as an approach to life, I need advice, I need consultation, you always have to go to experts. In Torah, the experts are, the more Torah one has studied, the more of an expert he is. Could he be wrong? Yeah, but so could you. And you're much likely to be wrong, more often. This is very important. I'm going to give you priceless advice, gentlemen, and you should pay me for this. When you get married, you're going to run into the problem of how to make policy decisions. Same thing when it applies to children. Did you guys ever say in your family had to make a decision about something and nobody listened to you? You always did. Your parents did what they decided, and then at a certain point you came back and said, well, if you would have listened to me, then we blah, 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 right? You come back and say, well, if they would have, did you ever say something like that? If you would have listened to me, okay. You know what the problem with that is? You know what the problem with that statement is? That you always express your opinion. We don't know when you're going to be right and when you're going to be wrong. Now, I know that your parents have a higher batting average than you. Now, who should we? If we would have listened to you all the time, then we'd all be in prison right now. All right? So I can't come back after the fact and say, well, if you would have listened to me, that's right. But this time, if we would have listened to you, means what you're really saying is we should always listen to you. And if we'd always listened to you, we wouldn't even gotten to this time because all our money would have been gone already long ago because your counterfeiting idea was a bad idea. So you understand, you got to choose a policy, a decision-making policy. When you get married, you got you versus your wife. And there are going to be policy decisions to make. I would advise you, you don't know in advance who's going to be right. You always think you're right because you're a man. I got news for you. The best policy you could adopt is turn over all decisions to your wife. Sometimes her decision will be, you make the decision. Okay? She feels she's not qualified, she'll let you know. Then you have to make the decision. But you have to choose a policy. And for the sake of your marriage well-being, and frankly, for the sake of the correct decisions, your wife has a better instinct on decisions, especially when regarding the children, because she's around the children, she knows the children better than you. Father doesn't know anything. What do you know? You come home and you say to your wife, oh, why should we let the kid eat that way? Why not let him eat some peanut butter and jelly? He doesn't like peanut butter and jelly. He never, oh, really? Yeah, well, what about her? She's badly allergic to peanut butter. Oh, well, what about her? She's not our child. Oh, right, I always forget that. Little details like that. I thought, I had no idea. Well, how many do we have after all? I thought there were 4 of them. No, there are only 3. So you got to turn over domestics, certainly. And when it comes to investing, also, because men are impetuous, men are spontaneous, men are not well thought out. Men always think they got a good idea, and the wife has much more. So I say, obviously, there are going to be certain times you got to make decisions you know better. Personally, whenever we have to make important decisions, I gather the facts, because I'm outside, I gather the facts, and I bring back the data to my wife. I don't trust myself to make the decisions, because men always have considerations of ego and a little bit of fantasy. Oh, if we do this, I could just see all those money bags dropping down. I'm going to have to call a Brinks to bring the profits to the bank, And the wife has got much more balance, much more level-headed. So I bring the data home and let her make the decision. Sometimes the decision is you make the decision. Okay, but that's her decision. And I'll make the decision, and then you have the benefit of knowing that she feels you're in the best position to make the decision. And it's a good idea in general. The other thing is, very important, and this people eat themselves alive with this. Once you've made a logical decision in life, you've done the best you can to make a lot, don't look back. Don't look back. What if I would have decided, I was in a cab in England, the guy said, okay, well, let's get out of traffic off the main street and let's take some side streets, which he did. And then we turned around one side street, there was construction going on. There's a whole lot of construction in London. They block up the whole street and they're in absolutely no rush. So the guy said, oh, if I would have known this, I wouldn't have come down this street. I said, yeah, but you didn't know it, and I didn't know it either, because neither of us are prophets. And the logical decision was the correct decision. You made the right decision, so what are you eating yourself up for? If you're Jewish, can you imagine you buy a pair of shoes for $40, and then the next day you happen to be driving past a store that's got the same shoes for $37.99. Oh, if only I would have known. If only I would have known, I would have driven 40 miles out of my way to save those $2, for what do you call it? If only I would have known, right? But you didn't know. On what you weren't meant to know. Did you make the logical decision that it sounded like a good price? You needed the shoes. You bought the shoes. You're not a prophet. So what do you care? What in life in general? You can't live like that. Otherwise, you drive yourself crazy. Because there's always second guessing. So if you're a fool and you made an emotional decision, that's one thing. But if you thought logically, under the circumstances, this was the correct decision, and you made the decision. So the fact that new data surfaces later, it's not your fault. It's not your problem. What are you waiting for? So you made the decision. You live with the decision. Don't go looking back. There are too many. It's endless in life. It's endless in life. Guy chooses a career. Guy decides I'm going to be an accountant. 20 years down the line, says, "Oh, if only I would have been a lawyer." But you're not a lawyer, and you didn't decide to be a lawyer at the time. You had a reason you didn't decide to be a lawyer. So what good does it do to you to look back? Now, the next one is the obligation that if you do an Aveira, let's say somebody does an Aveira unintentionally, where the punishment for the Aveira is premature death had it been done intentionally. For example, if you intentionally desecrate Shabbos, the punishment is kares. If you intentionally eat on Yom Kippur, the punishment is kares, which is premature death. If there are witnesses to the Shabbos desecration, then it's capital offense, and it's stoned. You get stoned and bathed. But let's say you did something, let's say you ate, there's the prohibited meat that comes from a cow, the chalev, the prohibited fats. If you eat the prohibited fats of a cow, intentionally, the punishment is kares. If a guy has an illicit relationship with a woman who's off limits, the punishment is kares. Premature death, okay? Now, let's say you did it unintentionally. Unintentionally means you walked into a room on Shabbos, bing, you flicked the light switch. You have to bring a korban chatas. You have to bring what's called a sin offering. Now, the obvious question is, why do I have to bring a sin offering if I didn't do it intentionally? Why should I bring? I didn't sin. It was an accident. Accidents happen, don't they? So why do I have to bring a sin offering? When you do, there are different types of accidents. Different types of accidents in life. If somebody pushed you and you went flying into a light switch and it turned on, that's not a korban. It was out of my control. Somebody pushed me. What can I do? I smacked against the wall and I happened to hit a light switch over there. That's not my fault. But if I walk into a room, flick, right? Well, what precautions did you take to make sure not to flick that light switch on Shabbos? Did you take any precautions? No? You didn't take a precaution? Shabbos isn't important enough to you? I'll pay you $100 if you make it through next Shabbos without flicking a light switch. What do you think you would do? I would. What's that? I would tape down all the light switches, or have my arms taped to my sides, or sabotage the entire electric supply of the city. But one way or another, I'm going to get that $100. You know why? Because it's important. So when I was a kid, I remember my dad bought me a calculator. That was when I was growing in high school. That was it. You guys probably never even seen calculators. Oh, did I pull a faux pas the other day at the other yeshiva? One of the guys was keeping track of I think it was the World Cup. The World Cup, and they told me the halftime score. I said to the guy, "Oh, wait, you heard on the radio?" So the guys looked at me. A couple of guys were standing there. They're, "Rabbi, radio? You know, have you ever seen a radio? You know what a radio is? And the guy said, I forgot that people could get it in more real time than the game's actually happening. So I was pretty embarrassed, because nowadays, you used to go into class with a wire up your sleeve and into your ear. You sit in class like this listening to radio of the ball game. Those days are long over, because now, people are actually watching the ball game. I think I was born a few decades too soon. If only I could go to high school nowadays. Oh, what a dream. If Shabbos was important to you, you would take a precaution. If you didn't take a precaution, it's only because it wasn't, okay, the accident wasn't yours, that's a reaction, oops. On the other hand, if I would be thinking a little bit more about Shabbos, I wouldn't even move my arm. Okay, I did move my arm. On the other hand, why didn't I type down the light switches? Take a precaution. If it's really important to you, if I told you, if you flick a switch today unintentionally, the roof of your house is going to fall in. What do you think you would do then? Then you for sure would tape down the light switches. What that means is that in every accident, Oh, so I started telling you, I had a calculator. My dad bought me a calculator. It was the latest, the cutting edge in calculators. It cost about $50 at the time. It's a lot of money. The day after I got it, I lost it. It took me a day and I lost it. My father was not pleased. And this was following a series of other lost items, usually having to do with school. And and eventually, I said to my dad, I don't understand why my dad was upset. I said, but Dad, I didn't do it on purpose. So my father said, I didn't say you did it on purpose. But if you would behave more responsibly, you wouldn't lose it. You didn't lose your baseball glove, right? Right? Why not? Because it's important. I said I didn't lose my baseball glove. If it was important to you, the accident wouldn't happen. So there are different degrees of accident. That's what the Torah is emphasizing.
How do you accidentally sleep with this woman?
What's that?
How do you accidentally sleep with a woman that's off limits?
Good. There's actually a case in the Gemara where a man walks into the house. It's dark. It's pitch black. And his wife and his sister are both in the home. And he accidentally sleeps with his sister. Okay? And he finds out, oops. It could happen. It could happen. The house is pitch black. He walked into the room. He heard a voice. They sound alike or whatever it is. Maybe it's his wife and his wife's sister. They sound alike. Got it. And it happened. These things can happen.
If you didn't know it was such a bad affair, would that be tantamount to...
No. Not lack of knowledge is not an accident. Lack of knowledge is also. I didn't know it's Shabbos. I didn't know it's Shabbos. How can you not know it's Shabbos? I heard a case, also, two women from England. Had been involved in a traumatic experience. Listen to this one. This is a doozy. Two women from England have been involved in traumatic experience. We have to stop. I'll just tell you the case. So the doctor said, there was a car accident. The doctor said they have to take some time off and get away from it all. So they went up and they rented a chalet in Switzerland. And they were in Switzerland for about 10 days, away from everybody and away from everything. Okay. After 10 days, they go back to the airport to fly back to England. And they come to the counter, and the lady at the counter says, you can't get on the plane. So why not? Because the tickets are for Tuesday. Today is Wednesday. They were so relaxed out in their chalet, away from everything, they lost track of time. So the women are giggling, dream vacation. And all of a sudden one goes, what, today's Wednesday? She goes, yeah. She goes, 1 second. Oy vey. You sure? Yeah. Oy vey. What's wrong? If today's Wednesday, that means we cooked and cleaned all day Shabbos in honor of Sunday. They had lost track of time. They didn't realize what it was Shabbos. So all day Shabbos, they were breaking Shabbos, preparing for Sunday. So they asked Rabbi Yashiv, what do you do in order to atone for this Aveira? The hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of actions that were desecrating Shabbos. The bottom line is, but they forgot it was Shabbos. I know plenty of people who never make those mistakes. Some people are always making mistakes like that. Some people never make mistakes like that. Because just like people are accident prone, you ever hear some guys are accident prone? Accident prone means you're a wilde chaya. That's what accident prone means. There's always one kid on the block who's accident prone, right? He's always got stitches, and he's got a brace, and he's got a splint. He's not accident prone. He's never on the ground. He's always either swinging from a tree or hanging from the ceiling or doing stuff. Of course you can be accident prone. The guy who's walking around with a baba kama is never accident prone. I've met people are halachically accident prone. Halachically accident prone means they're always ending up and saying, I thought it was kosher bacon. They've always they're the ones who, what do I do now? I was davening Shemon Esrei, and in the middle of Shemon Esrei, I made a borei pri ha'etz. Listen, buddy, and it's always the same people with the same problems. The answer is, it's not important enough to you. It's not important enough to you, otherwise it wouldn't be. And the people it is important enough to, the accidents don't happen.
So what is an acceptable sin offering in this day and age?
In this day and age, the best sin offering, if a person does a very, either give tzedakah or you learn Torah. Those are the sin offerings.
If he was ignorant to the fact that it was a sin that could create sorrows, then Hashem will forgive you.
Yeah, Hashem, the same God that said it's an Aveira is the same God that says if you do tshuva, you're forgiven. The same God. Because it's an all or nothing proposition. Sometimes guys do Aveiras, then they come back, my goodness, how could I do tshuva? I'll never do tshuva. 1 second. Why do you think it's an Aveira? You think it's an Aveira because God said it's an Aveira. Well, the same God said if you do tshuva, it's not an Aveira. It's an all or nothing proposition.